Hello again. It's Friday night and I'm back with my special guest, Nigel Jones.
Hello there.
Who chairs the Liberal Democrats Education Association that sat on the committee of for 3 years during the coalition government. Thank you so much for joining us on a Friday night for, can I compete with Graham Norton? I was trying last week, didn't manage very well. So today has been all about organising the Action Weekend with all these live events that are clearly advertised on this Facebook page now. Liberal Democrats, it's Roots Operation. That means you. Hi Christine, nice to see you. It means you have to come and help. We don't have big funders. We can't pay for loads of paid deliveries. To get these flyers out, to tell people where to come and meet me, we need you to come and help. We will be in Whitehaven Market all tomorrow morning on a stall. Really easy to come and find us. Come and take a few leaflets for your street, please. Okay, so Nigel's been out working, delivering leaflets all day today with his fabulous wife, who's just here opposite us. Thank you. Hello from Bolton. Hi, Michael. And so, did you hear any of Tony Blair's speech?
I didn't.
You
no,
didn't know?
No.
Okay. I think it's a really good speech, and I think it's worth people listening to. He's obviously put a lot of work into it, and it sounds like my world in the way that he's describing it, because he talks about policy, which is what we've worked on so hard together. And it's something that's come up in the hustings and all the debates we've been doing. Conservative policy has become written in sound bites in their press office. They just make it up on the back of an envelope, the thing that they think will get the most votes. They're just obsessed with power at all costs. They don't care what the consequences of what they're doing are. And it's so different to our world, isn't it?
Oh, yes. We very much spend an awful lot of time devising policy, and not just by a small select group of elite people either. We consult widely, and we give the opportunity for all our members at conference to vote for or against and to comment on or amend any policies that we put forward.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started doing it, it was quite a shock to the system. I worked on policy to improve the quality of what Ofsted was doing it by making it aware of the unintended consequences of its directives. And it took...
It took a long time.
It took a long time. I had to go back to the drawing board again and again and again, because you had to take into account everyone's point of view, all the policy that already existed, just wading through policy files to see what our previous policy was, consulting with the unions and subject associations, listening to so many people. And time again, I just had to rip it all up and say, well, what are we left with now we've heard all those points of view? And then it went to North West Conference for consultation. We had a substantial debate there. And then I went to one of the spring conferences. I went to Policy Dragon's Den. And at that stage, we realised that my policy wasn't really just about Ofsted. It was about all public sector regulation. And we kind of got stuck because I didn't have the resource to take that on, or the experience to talk about regulation in health. But I've got a lot of that now. And if I was in Westminster, I could drive that forward, and it'd be such a productive thing to do. And people saw me using the skills that you'd taught me and the committee had taught me when I was working on the success regime. And that's the skills base that we need in West Cumbria, and none of the other candidates have. And I know it doesn't seem so easy to elect me because I don't focus on winning favour and doing what people necessarily want. But I'm hoping, please, that you'll see past that and get out there, come down to Whitehaven Market tomorrow and grab a bundle and help out, because it's the only way we're going to do that.
Well, I've travelled up from Newcastle under Lyme in North Staffordshire with my wife, and we're spending 2 days up here at the moment helping Rebecca with her campaign, because I believe Rebecca's a very strong candidate and really does deserve to win. And one of the reasons why I can say that is because of what she just said about the work that she used to do when she was on the Lib Dem Education Association Committee, trying to change things, trying to challenge, and not only what she just mentioned about Ofsted, but during that period it was a coalition government, and she was with myself and certain other people having a go at our Liberal Democrat ministers in that government in order to challenge them and hopefully get them to challenge, in particular, Michael Gove.
Yeah, I've got
because
a
we
balance.
felt that although Michael Gove rightly said about the need to go on trying to improve standards in education, he was not going about things in the right way. And I think events since then have only enhanced that view, that he wasn't going about it in the right way. And Rebecca, during that period, was very, very strong and persistent about pursuing people like David Laws, for example, to ensure that he spoke up for the Liberal Democrat view on education and not allow Michael Gove to dominate everything.
Back somewhere on my personal Facebook, do you remember one of our conferences went over a Valentine's Day? They often were round about then. And David Laws became my Valentine, and I was just got a photo, a selfie with him.
That was at the meeting in Nottingham, I seem to remember.
Yeah, it was at the place that was built for professional development.
Yes, that's right.
That we often go to. Yeah. We were back there again, and it was, yes, David, darling, I'm hanging around you because there are things you need to know and things you need to do. It's like, happy Valentine's Day. I know you would rather not be here, but it's me.
So that proves to me that as an MP, Rebecca would certainly have a go at anybody that she thinks needs to be challenged in order to get things done better for the people of this country.
And then we hit this. I learnt about classic policy developments in my early days with the Education Association. And then things started to spiral out of control under Michael Gove because he was putting through so many reforms at the same time that they were all with curriculum and exams and other exams and this and that and the other, that people who were trying to keep an eye on what was going on were losing track. Do you remember we had some meetings where we were trying to discuss and say, well, should this be delayed? Should we campaign for this? And we were like, we can't get our heads round.
Well, one of the key issues I remember you tackling was the primary curriculum, particularly in mathematics, which is an area of expertise for yourself. Because it seemed to Rebecca and to the rest of us too that this government was, the government of the day, and in fact they're continuing this, were trying to push the development of certain skills in mathematics too fast, so that, and we know, I'm a maths teacher myself as well, or was, and I know for a fact that if you push kids too fast with certain skills in mathematics, they eventually sink, because they haven't got the understanding to go with it.
Yeah.
And that's always a danger when you're thinking of raising standards, to rush on kids to higher, more difficult things too quickly. And it doesn't work in the long run.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. So that summer, I worked really hard to bring together people from all the unions and all the subject associations, all the experts I could find, got them together at a conference in Manchester with Trevor Fisher and some Labour activists and all sorts of dedicated people to try and map out what was going on, so we could identify things like the introduction of the new Maths A-level needed to be delayed a year because it was only 1 year after the GCSE instead of 2, so it created a clash that just wasn't needed. And we drew up a sort of hit list of obvious things that needed to be adjusted that we could really fight for. And it was that kind of detailed work that nobody sees and it doesn't create headlines, but we just ground away at it because we had to go from developing our own detailed policy to firefighting chaos.
Yeah.
A bit like Brexit, really.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. So you were talking earlier about grammar schools and the work that you've been doing with that since I've not been...
Yeah, well, I proposed a motion at our Lib Dem conference in autumn saying that we were opposed to the expansion of grammar schools, and that got overwhelmingly voted for, And it seems to me that that is symptomatic of the way in which this Conservative government tends to push things. They seem to want to segregate people into different groups, which only in the end provides a somewhat divided society, but in any case also provides a society in which certain people are regarded as the elite, usually the academic elite in education, and then the others are regarded as second-class citizens as far as their education is concerned. And that is not only wrong for the people concerned, it is not fit for our economy. A future economy is going to require even more than it does now. More and more people who are more and more highly educated in the right ways. And that means we've got to raise standards for everybody. And we need also to make sure that we're dealing with vocational education. I would like to see a blurring of the distinction between vocational and academic. And this, there again, is something which the grammar school idea so runs against. And I'm not just saying this as my own personal opinion. The opinion of the vast majority of professionals who know about education are all agreed of these sort of things, are dividing people up into different groups and regarding one select group of academic people as the elite is not only wrong for the people, it's wrong for our economy and for the welfare of society.
And it's obvious to anyone who has worked in a good modern comprehensive school, because everything you're saying is real and it is here and it is effective and it is right for our communities and our kids. But again, we had Tory policy about grammar schools written on the back of an envelope to win votes, and no substance, no foundations to it, and it's gone to select committee. And you were saying that they've just...
The Education Select Committee of the House of Commons, which is an all-party group, only last week said that the government has no evidence to support its grammar school policy. None, there is none whatsoever.
And this is what Tony Blair is talking about, the driverless bus. It's policy that's based on nothing. It's just chaos and it's completely out of control. It's got no foundations in reality. And I think this is why so many people in West Cumbria, in Copeland, are so alienated by our politicians, because they've done MBAs and they've learnt about the fact that when you are working to implement ideas, you have to consult them fully, you have to look on them from different perspectives. I mean, when I studied management at Cambridge, we were nailed about the fact that somebody identifies a problem, it's not necessarily the problem. You have to look at different perspectives, you have to look at all the reasons for the status quo, you have to do all the research, read all the policy, understand why things currently are as they are, before you change them. And people get that here and they don't seem to get it in Westminster, and that's what keeps coming at us through the success regime, which is just like, we've made these decisions, these are our recommendations. Okay, why? What's the rationale for it? We don't have one. We haven't done the risk assessment, we haven't done the research. But if you need us to create one, we'll employ someone to write a risk assessment that tells us what we want to hear, which is what's happened here.
Yeah. And grammar schools isn't the only area where this is happening. They're doing the same with the idea of academies. There are many very good academies around, but there are some that are certainly not. In the same way that local authorities running schools, sometimes they do a good job, sometimes they don't. This whole obsession they have with making academies out of everything is not going to solve the problem of education. And one of the basic problems is raising the standards of those who have been relatively falling behind. We have, compared to many other developed countries, a bigger gap between the low achievers and the high achievers in our education system than any other country in the developed world. And that's not going to be tackled simply by making all schools into academy, and even worse if they were to make more grammar schools.
No, I know senior teachers, heads, deputy heads in West Cumbria who can write a detailed rationale as to why that is going on. Nobody from Westminster has ever come close to having any of that insight, and we are not being heard. And we're not being heard about Whitehaven Academy. and I want to get elected so I can go and shout this from the rooftops in Westminster and tell them about reality and point out when they are writing policy on the back of an envelope or perhaps on toilet paper, frankly.
One of the other items that has emerged recently in education in the national news is behaviour in schools, which has cropped up again, and the fact that there are some places where some youngsters, the teachers spend more time with them trying to get them to behave than teaching them. And it seems to me that the fundamental issue that's overlooked there is not just about behaviour, it's also because especially the highly academic, theoretical education that's being forced on them is not appropriate for them, and therefore they're not responding.
This brings me back to my real interest in politics, how it began. Here in West Cumbria, we had ways of teaching maths, low threshold, high ceiling ways, with context, with apparatus,
that's right,
that were fabulous ways of teaching that the kids, they weren't just being taught maths, they were being taught to be really good people because they were working in extended ways, they were getting stuck, they were learning to get unstuck. The lessons could be taught to mixed ability classes, so all the kids could work together, and children who were maybe quite low attaining at maths could suddenly be having university level conversations because they were structured that way. And all that was wiped out by Ofsted and the unintended consequences of Ofsted, which is how I first became so politically aware. And of course, back in 2009, that kind of time when I was lecturing at Manchester Met, I could get involved in those policy consultations to try and fix that, because it was effectively devolved from Westminster to the education community. We were working on it as a community. And we were making progress, and it was really good to be part of that debate. And then the debate was shut down, and all those experts were persecuted by Michael Gove and put out of work. I mean, we must be surely the only country in the world that does not cherish the idea of having education experts, people who understand different types of school, different stages of education. What is that all about? This idea that experts are somehow evil and need to be eradicated. They're a fundamental part of the education system. Teachers need somebody to turn to that can mentor them on a particular area of subject expertise. Let's have a little look through what people have been saying to us. If you've got any questions, please type them in now. I'd love to hear them. Obviously, particularly questions about education. I have the guru here who knows all our policy inside out. Hello, Michael. Hi, Sue. Lovely to hear from St Bees. Any chance you could come in to Whitehaven tomorrow morning and collect some leaflets for St Bees? Because that would be really helpful. Thank you. Blair's speech is detailed, long, and contains a lot of good content. I agree. I've not listened to all of it yet, but I was listening to it when you arrived. Well worth listening to in full. I will get to it in full, and I recommend that other people do too. Yeah, you've got the experience, and it's lovely to be able to talk about it with somebody else who lives in my world, because I have so much in common with people from the other political parties here in West Cumbria. There is so much. We have so much more in common than that which divides us. But I haven't got this. They don't do this. They don't do this detailed policy development, which you trained me in, the committee trained me in, so I could bring it back to West Cumbria to work on this success regime. What have we got here? An important part of the Blair speech is his words that the government has no bandwidth for anything at all except Brexit. So no bandwidth for education, the NHS. I know exactly. It's just like what's happened with the NHS here in Cumbria, because we've been doing this success regime consultation. So many other good projects have been suffocated because everyone's fighting the closure of obstetric services because it matters so much that they can't get on with other things that really do matter too. And, I think the thing that startled me most about Michael Gove was not all his horrific education policy. It was that he made this big declaration that it would be a great idea to run a cultural revolution in education. Do you remember that article in the Daily Telegraph? His revolution for culture, and how Mao would he would create a great leap forward. And Who was it? Who was the Labour guy who held up Mao's little red book and everyone laughed?
Oh, yes.
Why didn't they laugh at Michael Gove? Why didn't they laugh at someone who wanted us to melt down all our teaspoons for a great steel revolution that was clearly never going to work, was completely illogical and would just create a great leap backwards? And who is proposing this as being a fabulous idea? And in response to that, the Tory government promoted him, kept him in position, made him Minister for Justice. It's like, they're all mad. Like,
talking about China, one of the Conservative ministers recently has been saying how we need to copy what goes on in Shanghai in their schools, because Shanghai
Nigel.
is top of the international league table. But in fact, I've met 2 teachers from Shanghai and watched them teach and so on. And I have to say that I wasn't completely convinced by their approach to things, but they revealed a number of things that I think show one of the reasons why some of the schools in Shanghai do well. One is that they give the teachers plenty of time to prepare lessons and plenty of time to observe each other teach without it being written down in any sort of performance regime and certainly not any pay scale matter. So the teachers are just there helping each other teach, and they're given the resources and the time to do that. So they have a shorter teaching day than our teachers have. So the teachers over there have the space to do the job properly.
And they send all the kids from the manual workers, they're back in the country, they're not part of the system. And these children are all being prepared for a metropolitan economy where education is all that matters. And there are lots of other reasons, but I too went to one of those sessions, and it was about how to teach Year 1 maths. So they had this Year 1 class in who were getting a death by PowerPoint lesson. How many PowerPoint slides this teacher had created, they were chanting the same thing. And they were doing reception class standard maths. They were not doing Year 1 maths from our curriculum. And they were being taught by a couple of teachers from Shanghai, very young teachers, who had never taught children below the age of 7. And these children were 5 and 6. And death by PowerPoint lessons do not work, except these children were surrounded by 100 observers watching this fabulous Shanghai teaching. And I just, it was nonsense. I just wrote on my pad of paper, the emperor is wearing no clothes. I run training in school and teaching Year 1 children, they've got to be working with apparatus. They've got to be touching and feeling the maths because they've got much poorer working memory than children who are 7. But these teachers from Shanghai had no experience of working with children who were 5 or 6 and had very poor working memory, and they'd not developed any of the relevant strategies. So we're having a Chinese cultural revolution.
Yeah. Some comments here.
Jane says, I heard UKIP have been telling their supporters the best way to help the party is to go out and retrain as teachers, i.e. promote UKIP policies in school. Well, I've been in doing assemblies and it's been an absolute joy. I wrote to all the schools and said, can I come in and talk to children about standing for election and try and motivate them to consider getting involved in politics themselves? And it's just been a delight. And I'd be happy to go in with a UKIP person and we could have a debate about, let's go.
That attitude to me represents one of the things that hasn't been realised by enough people yet about groups like UKIP. They say that they are anti-establishment, but what they really mean is that they want to replace the present establishment with an establishment in which all their views will dominate and possibly even oppress people. And then there's another comment here about Lib Dem, asking about Lib Dem education policy.
Yeah, the heart of Liberal Democrat,
Well, we work hard at our policies, all our policies, not just education, so it would be impossible to summarise it. And in fact, at this moment in time, the party is working very hard on a policy for the future. That will emerge over the next 12 months, hopefully. But if you want a little summary of what I think about the Liberal Democrat approach to education, and it's that we put the person, the child, the young person, the adult, in the case of adult education, at the centre, and see everything around that core of trying to develop that person to be a good and constructive individual and member of society with the appropriate knowledge and skills to do that in whatever form of education that suits them best. It's not about uniformity. The Labour policies very often on education tend to be that we teach them all the same. In fact, it was a trades union member who made that comment in reaction to the government's current policy on grammar schools by saying, oh, you know, you don't divide them, you teach them all the same. Well, teaching them all the same is just as bad as dividing them into separate groups. And the Lib Dems believe that we keep them together as a group, but we teach them all in the various ways that suit them best, and encourage them all in whatever form of education that suits them to reach the highest possible standards.
And a modern comprehensive school does that. You know, by the age of 14, the children are together for things like personal development and RE, and they are discussing issues together and being a community.
Yes.
But and in maths and English, they are usually setted together.
That's right.
So, but then they've got options. So some of them may be doing a college course, some will be doing a vocational course, some will be doing a fully academic profile of GCSEs. But whatever they're doing there, they can be in whatever set for maths or English that suits them. And it's just common sense. It just works. It's an underpinning for society. But there are other things about Lib Dem education policy that I think we take for granted and don't necessarily see. And that is that when I was on that committee, everybody on it had a huge amount of relevant experience and a real diversity experience. We were seeking out people to fill the gaps, you know, if we didn't have
such a diversity of experience, we often didn't agree.
Do you remember? I mean, Andrew Bridgewater was our
not
great...
on the detail, anyway.
Andrew Bridgewater was our great person on special needs, and when we lost him, there was suddenly a real hole. He died suddenly, and you know, pay my respects to him. He was another person who inspired me. But we had John Howson and, you know, so many brilliant people with a huge width background in education. Whenever you're proposing something, it's like the Lib Dems are the ones who challenge you most.
Yes.
You expect to be challenged by people from other parties, and we're always ripping each other to bits. It's like, no, that doesn't work, and no, you can't do that. So we took that for granted. And just the way in which policy is developed, bottom up, exploring the foundations, challenging everything, doing the detail. Again, I took that for granted. I thought that was normal. Now I realise it's something really special that we have to cherish and protect and somehow try and make survive in this crazy world. And hopefully teach people from other political parties to do it too. I mean, here, when I've been working on the success regime in West Cumbria, I've been trying to explain to people and do everything that I've done to do really detailed scrutiny.
Christine's come back again with...
I've been trying to teach everyone around me, people from the Labour Party in particular who've been interested, how to do that too, what she said. So assuming the outside organisation is removed from Whitehaven Academy, what would be your plans for the school, Rebecca? Okay, so we had a plan in place to merge the 3 secondary schools in Whitehaven. That was the 2 large secondary schools and the special school. And it's going ahead with the other 2 schools. And we need to get back control so we can stop that process with other schools and build one school in Whitehaven. It's the only way we can stabilise it, because there is an overcapacity of places and a real propensity for a sink school in that area because of the way that society is in Whitehaven. It's absolutely essential that we build one community school with a tremendous amount of oversight, a comprehensive school the way that I've just described. And it won't be easy. There will be a lot of pain to get there. But we can't even start that process. And meanwhile, the rebuild for the other 2 schools is about to start. And this is just nonsense. It's going to cost a huge amount of money. It's just causing pain. We've at least got to get the foundations in place to be able to build for the future instead of just We've got an amazing team of people in Whitehaven Academy. They have my full support, the head, the deputy head, the staff, the students, but they are working against impossible forces and they are making progress, but they're being just hit by chaos, and it's not fair that they are trying to make progress from so far back. Those kids have had no IT for 3 years in a secondary school in the 21st century. And the fact that this Tory government have decided not to remove the sponsor is just eye-wateringly bad. You know, people wonder why we didn't trust David Cameron when he said don't vote for Brexit. It's because of what you're doing with our schools and our health service. Central government, Tory policy, written on the back of an envelope, written on a bit of toilet paper, and that's it. And they don't care what the implications are because they only care about votes and power. That's it, really. So I think that's about time to finish. We've got no more questions. Please, please, please come to Whitehaven Market in the morning or come to one of our live events over the weekend. They're all detailed down below, further down on this Facebook page. Please like the Facebook page. Please share. Please donate, rebeccahanson.org.uk. You can donate to this campaign. We've all that. You saw some advertising in the Whitehaven News. Ours wasn't union funded. Ours was raised bit by bit, all in cash. Thank you to everyone who donated. Thank you to everyone who's supported us. Have a lovely weekend. Hope to see you at some stage during it. I'll do a late night brief Facebook Live tomorrow night after all the events. And then we've got a big one programmed in for Sunday afternoon. It's on the time, on the schedule, with Chris Davies, MEP of the Year 2014, on why the single market matters. I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you so much for coming, Nigel.
That's right. It's good to be here, and I hope I've encouraged people to think very carefully about voting for the Liberal Democrats, and particularly for Rebecca, who I think I can say is somebody who has shown already that she can challenge people in government ministers, that she already did during that coalition period, as well as being an active local councillor, showing that she can also do things locally for local people. And that, to me, is an ideal combination for an MP, because some people say some MPs, they spend all their time on government business and not in the constituency, and other MPs are good constituents MPs, but they're no good when it comes to national policy. Well, I think in Rebecca we've got somebody who can do both.
Thanks, Nigel. Okay, wine o'clock.